Hello, and welcome to Patchwork. Patchwork is a world-building toolkit that you can use to create new fictional worlds by collaging together lots of little scraps of images and text. Your main interface for doing this is an infinite canvas. On the canvas, you can generate, organize, and modify text and images to gradually build out a coherent story world. You can click and drag to pan around the canvas as you might expect, or zoom in and out to see more or less stuff at a time. Almost everything on the canvas is a scrap. Clicking on a scrap, like this K, lets you select it and move it around. Selected scraps also display an action bar above them. You can see that in the top left corner here. This action bar allows you to offer a bunch of scrap-specific actions that you can perform. For instance, if you click on one of these, it'll tell you more about what's going on in this particular image. Scraps can be deleted if you don't want to see them anymore, and you can also use Control-Z to undo the most recent action you just performed. On the left side of the screen, you can also see a toolbox. This offers you a bunch of tools for creating new entities that exist in the story world, stuff like characters and places and factions and so on. And there's also tools for making new notes and images. We'll talk more about those in a sec. What I'm going to do now is actually create a portal from the toolbox by pressing the portal button, and then clicking on the canvas where I want to place it. This portal will allow us to create a new world, so let's go ahead and go into it. So now we're looking at the world initialization modal. This is the screen where you can basically choose the high-level premise of the world that you're creating, as well as some style references for this world, and generally the vibe that you're trying to evoke. There's a few different things you can do here. One of these is hit this die icon to kind of shuffle through a bunch of possible different inspirations for the world that you're trying to create. And this is great if you don't know what you're trying to do. You can also kind of pass through this list of randomly selected style reference codes and pick out the ones that you think are especially interesting or compelling to kind of combine them into the world that you're making. I'm going to pick this one. I'm going to hit show me more to get a few more alternatives. I kind of like the pink in this one. I'm probably going to run with this ghost town populated by holograms premise. I haven't really played with that one before, so we're just going to see how it goes. I'm going to go for a super colorful kind of vibe here, maybe. I'm not sure if I want to go as fully abstract as this, but I do like the oranges and the pinks over here, and I really like the soft pinks sort of fading into the background on this one. So I'm just going to go ahead and run with these two. I've got this checkbox checked to use my personalization as well. This is available if you have a personalization code that's been given enough image rankings to be useful. And if you don't have one, then you can't use this feature, but it'll still stylize the world the way that you're preferring based on these style references. So I'm going to go ahead and hit create world here. This is going to take a second to initialize and then set up a canvas for us that has this initial setting premise up in the top left here. We've got it both in this world entity, which is kind of a object that represents the world itself, and in this textual description scrap down here. And both of these are editable if we want. I can rename this world to something else. One thing I can do is keep this description down here and then hit this tell me more button to come up with an automatic name for this world. So the system thinks this should be called Simulacrum Hollow, which I kind of like, so I'm going to leave that. You can see that the style references that we picked are actually populated into the world as scraps. And in the bottom left-hand corner of each one, we've got what we call an entity handle. And this shows that it's kind of linked to this world entity and is considered to be part of that entity for the system's purposes. And that means that when I double click this entity, all of its scraps get selected. And so far, everything in this world is actually linked together because these are also images that have been generated using my style references and using my personalization, which is over here, as sort of visualizations of this entity, the world itself. We can kind of zoom into these and see which ones we like or don't like. They all have kind of this interesting pink-orange aesthetic. And you can also see that one of these is being used as the portrait for the entity, kind of the default visualization of the world in these little thumbnails or previews of it that you see in the corners of other scraps. So all of this is kind of linked together to give us a high-level vibe for this setting. Now, the next thing you might notice is that we've got this toolbox on the left-hand side. And again, this is the thing that we can use to create new entities of various types. You can never delete the world entity. This is always going to be here, but there's a whole bunch of other things that we can possibly create and delete, and kind of use these if we want to get inspiration on things that might happen in this story. So if I go ahead and I pick character here, I can click on the board to place this character entity where I want. I don't actually have any information about this character yet. I don't have a strong idea of what I'm trying to do in this setting. So I'm going to go ahead and use tell me more again on the entity itself. to start populating in automatically a name and a possible bio for this character. So here we've got a character named Amara Vihan. She's a resilient and resourceful historian obsessed with unraveling the mysteries of the Hollow. And she's kind of looking for secrets and things that are in the backstory of this world, but might come to a conflict with people who prefer that this town remains undisturbed. And possibly the citizens of the town themselves don't want her poking around and trying to find this stuff out. I kind of like this, so I'm going to go ahead and try to imagine her as a portrait. And you can see here that what I've done is actually press this paint interaction on the textual description scrap and drag and sort of create what we call an image construction site for portraits of this character. And you can see that the image construction site has both this textual prompt, which is populated from the description that we painted, as well as these srefs, which are the world default style references. This profile, which again is my personalization that's being applied by default because it's attached to the world entity. And of course, the character herself that we're trying to paint, Amara. And all of this stuff together can kind of be used as ingredients together with this prompt to create a set of images that reflect these things all being sort of tossed in a blender and used to make a picture. So let's go ahead and paint this batch. We're going to see a few possible different visualizations of what this character might look like come in, and all of them are kind of linked to that Amara Vihan entity by default. Again, kind of you can see that there's this connection between these entities, like this red thing over here, and in the bottom left-hand corner of these portraits, that this is a visualization of this particular character. Okay, so these are all kind of interesting silhouette characters for the most part. This is the one that looks most real. And so I'm going to probably keep this one because it might make the best character reference overall. I really like the way that we've got the same hairstyle for this one. And this is kind of a coincidence, but I think I'm going to keep this one anyway. And I'm also going to go ahead and probably delete or maybe even just unlink these two. To unlink them is to say that they're not a part of that character anymore, but I do kind of want to keep them around in the world as possible inspiration for things that might happen in the future. Maybe one of them is a different character, like this lady might be a different person. Maybe there's something else that gets sort of like developed further on in the story that's based on these images, and we just haven't figured out what that is yet. At any rate, I'm going to use this is my sort of canonical portrait of Amara. This might be an alternative portrait. We'll see how the system is able to make use of this as a character reference. And either way, we now have kind of a default look and a basic description for this person. Now, let's go ahead and see if we can get inspiration for a second character, one who might be a little bit more in conflict with Amara, someone who maybe represents the people of the town or those who don't want her to sort of map out the secrets. So here we've got a former military cartographer turned survivalist hermit who's distrustful of outsiders and is kind of imposed on purpose, or sorry, isolated on purpose. And so Amara is going to sort of come into this town and disturb the situation by asking a bunch of probing questions, whereas Zaina is going to be kind of protective of these secrets and doesn't want to reveal them. Let's go ahead and paint her as well, again, using this textual description. And we can sort of shape this image differently if we want. So maybe I'll make a wide portrait and see how that goes. We'll go ahead and paint it. And you can see again that these are all linked up. In the meantime, while these paint, I'm going to go ahead and suggest some places that we might have our characters go, like little parts of this world that they might go to. Oh, an abandoned theater, kind of interesting. Let's come over here and try one more. Dilapidated opera house. Okay, so I kind of like these. They hint at this like sort of performance theme, which I think is kind of interesting. And that's something I was really going for with this initial like ghost town populated by holograms situation. So I might lean more into that in a second. Looking at these character pictures, most of them are of somebody who's viewed from the back, and that makes for interesting sequences of images of people like walking around sometimes. So I might go ahead and keep this image of her being kind of distant and off in the background and has a backpack on, maybe. I'm just going to get rid of these and maybe try to use these to give us like a little image sequence of Zaina, maybe hiking through the woods and heading towards one of these destinations that we see over here. With this abandoned theater, I'm going to paint it really fast just so I can get a feel for what it might look like. And same for the dilapidated opera house. I'm going to do kind of a wide one for this one, I think, and see if we like any of those. Now, in the meantime, Once I have an image of a particular character, and especially once that character has some portraits linked to them, I can go in and hit this button over here, the repaint button, to basically create a new image construction site with the same ingredients as the old one. So I can do, you can see here that this is all linked up again. We've got this default style references, and we've got this Zaina Delmar character. And because she has portraits, these are going to be used as character references in painting more images of her. So we can go ahead and do something like, Zaina walking through the woods, far from civilization. Just kind of get maybe a view of her on a hiking trail or something like that. Okay, so our abandoned theater, we're getting mostly interior views of it over here. Um, and I kind of like this as a way for it to look. I'll delete these other ones that aren't as consistent with that vibe that I'm going for. And over here in this corner, I'm going to, I think just maybe use these as the exterior for the theater, because we got mostly exterior views of this one, and I kind of like a few of these. I'm going to get rid of most of these pictures. I'm going to actually delete this entity entirely, and that unlinks the stuff that's attached to it. Delete even the concept of it, but link this picture up using this link action here to the abandoned theater. And so we can now kind of see that there's two different views of this theater, one from the outside, one from the inside, and we might use either of these in a story that we're creating to kind of build out a sequence of images that, again, reflect this character walking from one place to another. Okay, so I kind of like some of these. We've got Zaina kind of walking through the woods, kind of weird feet or legs in this one. And all of them have this sort of interesting, like, light being cast down from above that I think is kind of compelling. I'm going to unlink this one because I don't want to use it in the sequence, but I'm going to stash it over here just in case. Um, and we can start to get this impression of Zaina walking through this sequence of places and kind of observing weird things going on. Um, Now, an image sequence like this one often benefits from having both perspectives on the character, but also perspectives on the setting. So we can say something like, the underbrush is very thick and tangled. There are lots of weird plants reaching up, and see if we can get an interesting visualization of what that environment she's walking through might look like. And then at the same time, oh, I just clicked a single time instead of drawing a little area, by the way, and that makes a small default size image scrap. So for this one, I'm actually going to go ahead and say, um, hmm, let's do in the background, the mountains are studded with weird obelisks, um, and see if we get some interesting sort of potential background scenery. And then maybe we'll do one more of background. Birds are flying around, but they are very few in number. And we'll see if we get an interesting kind of set of forest scenes that we can basically link up. Okay, so here's some weird obelisks in the background. We'll go ahead and put them. We'll pick this one because this one looks a little bit more abstract and like they're off in the distance, compared to some of these being a little bit more close up. But here we have a couple of different views of vegetation. I don't like this one that much. This is kind of an interesting one where she might sort of enter a cave or something later on. And over here, we've got some bird scenes. This one's not great. This one's not great. I think this one is pretty compelling, though. And this one looks more like it's in a suburban or urban environment. So I might even save that for later on. But yeah, we've kind of got this sequence of images of Zaina, first maybe off in sort of like the distance from the camera. She's walking through the woods. We kind of zoom out on her and get a view of what the vista she's looking at might be. Over here, we've got sort of a cutaway of like, oh, there's this weird obelisk off in the background. We've got some birds in the distance. We've got these sort of vegetations. Maybe eventually, after she walks past this cave, she's going to find a weird building. And then as she gets closer, um, I'm going to go ahead and do Zaina looks at the entrance to the mysterious theater in surprise. this shouldn't be out in the middle of the woods, right? Um, and then add as an ingredient to this scrap the image of the exterior of the theater that we had before. So you can see here that it's been added as an ingredient. It's got kind of a wide shape here. We've still got these default style references. I'm also going to add Zyna directly. In this case, I can use this infer character button because her name is in the text prompt, so it'll just kind of like link her up. And this will make an image that should, in theory, be based on the entrance to the theater and include all of our style references and all the character portraits of Zyna herself. So let's go ahead and see if this works. And in the meantime, I might do one or two more images of Zyna just to sort of like link these sequences together narratively. Um, I'm gonna do she crosses the stream. Water is shallow but moves fast. And see if we get something of her maybe stepping over like a little bit of water or something like that. I'm actually gonna put these more up here. And here we go. We start to get an impression of her standing at the entrance to this weird building, being like, what is this doing here? And I kind of like that. Um, so as she moves in towards it, maybe this one is next, and then maybe it's followed by this one of her actually entering. Maybe the rhythm here is a little bit off, and we want to remove this middle one, but I have not decided yet. I haven't sort of decided. Um, I'm gonna go ahead and delete, I think. Hmm. Maybe let's use this one as the middle one. Get rid of this one because it's kind of similar to the other. And then get rid of this one. And then implicitly we have her kind of choosing to go inside. Okay, now up here, we've got her in the middle of a stream. I kind of like this one. This one seems like she's actually crossing it. And yeah, just in general, we get this impression of Zyna kind of moving through the woods in kind of this strange, surreal landscape, witnessing some of the things that there are to see. We've got almost a montage kind of vibe going on. She reaches the stream. She crosses it, presumably. There's a cave of some sort. And then finally, she reaches this strange building and she looks at the entrance before deciding that she's probably going to go inside. And so this is the kind of image sequence storytelling that you can already start to do with this tool. I think it's really interesting to try to pan out these narrative sequences and see how they go. Different aesthetics work differently, and you don't always get great results for these. But I'm pretty happy with what we've got so far, and I could definitely imagine this sort of turning into a longer, more elaborate story as I continue. I'm just going to demonstrate a few more possible interactions. So far, we've looked a lot at the creation of entities, at linking things together, and making images. But just to sort of point out, you can also create a bunch of different entity types over here. In addition to characters and places, we've got events, which are things that might happen in the story. We've got props, which are objects the characters might find or interact with. We've got factions, which might be groups of characters that are moving around in the background behind the scenes. If I want to, I can actually create a new entity without populating any of its details automatically. So I could say, let's maybe not do a character. Let's do an event. We'll do Zyna finds the weird abandoned theater in the woods. And I'm actually going to put that as the description text for it. I'm going to, for the name of this event, maybe just call it Theater Discovery or something like that. And then I'm going to actually ask the system for more details about this event. It's going to populate in another little block of text here, and it suggests something that might happen next in our story. So while exploring the abandoned theater, Zyna stumbles upon a hidden room containing eerie holographic recordings from the town's original residents. And apparently the town itself was once a place full of real people instead of weird ghost holograms, and that might be the thing that she finds in this theater. So that's kind of an interesting next direction that the story might go. You can also imagine sort of partially configuring these types of entities. So again, like we had the bit where I wrote this text myself and then wrote the name for it myself and then imagined more of it. You can do other configurations of this for characters. So you might have a character that's just like, I need an antagonist for Zyna or something like that. And then let's on the entity itself hit tell me more about this character. It'll give us just a name by default, and then I'll ask for even more details. So over here, we've got something like Okay, this is secretly the creator of the simulacrum hollow holograms, using the town as an experiment to study human behavior. Now, this is kind of cliche and kind of generic, but you can kind of churn through a bunch of these and see if you get ones that are interesting, and then kind of reuse the bits that you like. I also encourage people in general to edit this text as much as they can, because editing the text is one of the ways to kind of inject more of your own ideas into the system rather than just having the system kind of take you on a ride. Okay, so let's go ahead and delete this stuff. I don't particularly need this character. I do kind of like this event. I'm actually going to move it down towards the bottom of our sequence here to remember that I want to sort of have this happen next, basically. Um, and just kind of to zoom out and show us the whole board for a second, there's a lot of different stuff going on here. And I could easily imagine starting to do like a really involved world building session, but it would take a long time. I'm pretty happy with where we're at though, so I'm going to go ahead and hit the share tab and kind of protect this world. By default, everything is editable to everyone, and the portals that we've created to get here make it sort of linked to the lobby world or the place that we came from. And so what I'm going to do is set this to people can view but not edit by default. And then if I really want, I can actually add people by their Midjourney ID using this invite tab here. And I'm not going to get into that in this particular video, but this is a thing that you can do if you want to create a world that's only viewable to most people, but also editable to you and some of your friends. And in theory, I could even create a totally private world by setting this to none. I'm not going to do that right now, but this is another option that you have. And because this is a research preview, there's no guarantee that everything is going to be saved completely. So I'm going to also make a local backup of this world by hitting the save button. This will just give me a JSON file that contains all the stuff that I've made. All the images that I've generated here, by the way, are going to be in my gallery on the website, so I can go there and retrieve them. But this will make sure that the scraps and the text and all the different ways that these things are arranged are also backed up in some form. Okay, I've just shown you a whole bunch of stuff. There's actually even more stuff to discover. I think I'm going to leave that stuff to an FAQ. But this is the way that Patchwork works, and I'm really excited to see what people are going to make with it. Thank you.